Hi folks, name's Graeme. I'm an alcoholic. I'm glad to have a chance to meet with you today. By doing this, I get to keep my sobriety another day. By giving it away, I get to keep it, and that might seem a paradox to you. My first drink was at age 16, and I'll never forget it. The girl's name was Brenda. It was in the second floor apartment. The carpet was blue, the wallpaper was blue with pink flowers. The beverage was Johnny Walker Red Label. And when I drank that, I thought, this is what normal's like. You see, before that, I'd never felt I really fitted in. I didn't really feel good enough. I felt a bit of a failure. I grew up in a difficult home, and that might have been one of the reasons why I had the low self-esteem. And the low self-esteem I counteracted with control and aggression. I was aggressive in sports, and I was aggressive in studying. And the result of the aggression, I got into medical school when I was 18. And I graduated at age 22 with an MD, which stood for massive denial in my case, because by that time I was drinking alcoholically. I think, in fact, I've never drunk socially. I didn't realise that in my brain I have a little switch that when I put alcohol on it, I automatically want more. Dr. Silkworth called it the phenomenon of craving, and I never realised I had that. I did notice that I wanted to drink more than other people. I did drink more than other people. I get frustrated when people stop drinking because I wanted to continue. And that tells me that I've got this disorder, which we now know is a brain disorder. It's chronic and it's prone to relapse. And I can remember many times when I quit drinking, but I didn't have a problem quitting. I would get arrested, or I'd pass out, or run out of money. My problem wasn't stopping. My problem was starting again. I just couldn't stop starting, because my head said to me, somehow this will be different this time. The compulsion of my mind said, you have to have a drink to sleep, you have to have a drink to dance, you have to have a drink to be normal. But I didn't realise that once I started, I couldn't control it. To use the AA term, I was powerless over alcohol. When it got into my brain, I wanted more. And I remember sitting one time in a bar looking at a bottle of beer thinking, if I start this now, I don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes nothing happened. Other times I break out in spots like Chicago or Buffalo or other places like that. I never knew which was going to happen. And finally, at age 42, I had a very profound moment of clarity and saw my disease the way my mother must have seen it, the way my wives must have seen it, the way my kids must have seen it, the way the people I worked with must have seen it. And I remember the fear and the panic that if I continue doing this, I'm going to die. I was in hospital having an operation. I signed myself out against medical advice. I went home and I went down to my basement and I started to drink, because that's how I dealt with life. Some years before, I had a man in my office I'd seen as a patient, and he was alcoholic. And Terry has given me permission to use his name. Terry disappeared from my office with a prescription for Librium that I always thought was the treatment of alcoholism, and came back 3 months later looking great. I said to him, Terry, how are you doing? You're looking great. And he said, Doc, I'm staying sober in a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. And that night, on the 3rd of January 1986, I phoned Alcoholics Anonymous. A man came to my door and sat in my kitchen. His name was Bill H. And Bill H didn't point his finger at me like the wives did, like the cops did, like the College of Physicians and Surgeons did, like the police did. Bill didn't point his finger at me. Bill pointed his finger at him. He said, if you want what I've got, you'll do what I've done. He was 34 years sober, and he told me how he stayed sober. He treated me with respect, he treated me with kindness, and he left me with the biggest thing you can give to a practicing or early recovering alcoholic. He left me with hope. I realised I could get better. Went to treatment, finished treatment, came home, started going to AA. Started going to AA meetings and walked in. The first meeting I went to, a big French-Canadian boy called Marcel stuck his hand out and said, we've been waiting for you. And I thought, how the hell did he know? Now I know it's a standard AA line. Marcel had great big white eyeballs. I was fascinated with his eyes. Mine were red and crusty and a mess. It says in the big book we all go to meetings for different reasons. Well, I would go to meetings because I wanted to have eyeballs like Marcel's. These big, clean, bright eyes. And after I did my 5th step, I remember coming home at night. My wife had been away, and she said to me, "Your eyes." I said, "What about my eyes, honey? Honestly, I haven't done anything." She said, "I'll pee in a bottle if you want. I've not done anything." She said, "No, it's your eyes." I said, "What about my eyes?" She said, "The tombstones have gone. The tombstones have gone." You see, when I was drinking and drugging, I was getting ready to die. When I got into recovery, I started to live. That first year was so hard. It was filled with shame, filled with guilt, filled with fear. And what I found in AA was a fellowship of men and women who were just like me. I didn't have to put on a front. I didn't have to put on a mask. I could be real. When I was in treatment, I was asked to read The Velveteen Rabbit. The Velveteen Rabbit book is all about being real. "How do you know you're real?" says the rabbit to the rocking horse. And the rocking horse says to the rabbit, "You know you're real when you're loved." And I was loved in AA. They didn't care who I was, where I'd been, what I'd done. They were just glad I was there. And over the years, I found the same thing with newcomers. When I see them coming in, I'm glad they're there because they remind me of that difficult first year with the emotions and the guilt and the shame and the joy and the excitement and the despair and all these peaks and valleys that go on in that first year. I was told to get a sponsor. I got a sponsor called Third Step Jack. And he was called Third Step Jack was because I'd called Jack up with a problem, and Jack would say, "Read the third step and put the phone down." I thought he was a very cruel man until I read the third step, and basically it said, "You got to quit playing God." Here was I, a doctor. I would go into hospital and write orders. It doesn't get much more powerful than that. And that was my mindset. When I realized I had to develop some humility and start asking for help, I began to get better. As I read the big book and went to lots and lots of meetings, I discovered that Bill Wilson expected me in the big book to develop an effective spiritual structure. Bill told me in the book that the foundation of that structure was willingness. I had to be willing to do what I was told. I had to be willing to ask for help. I had to be willing to go to these meetings. I had to be willing to reach out to the newcomer and try to be some kind of assistance. The cornerstone of that structure that he told me to build was belief. I had to believe in something bigger than me, something more powerful than me. In AA they call it a higher power, and I'm okay with that term. So I began to believe there was something in there that was keeping me sober because I knew I couldn't do it myself. And then the arch that you walk through to freedom is the third step, and that's the top of that structure. The keystone is there. You walk through the third step and you turn your will, which is your thinking, and your life, which is your actions, over to this power you found in the second step. And that effective spiritual structure is wonderful until I go to bed tonight. I go to sleep. It disappears. Tomorrow morning I got to start building it again. How do I do that? By trying to live a spiritual life. In treatment in the first few months I physically got better. I could keep food down, I could start to walk better, I felt better, lost some weight, looked better, lost the high flushed colour and all the rest of it. Over the first year there were emotions that came up, particularly anger and rage, and then I was given the steps to change that. And then I was told you have to go on a spiritual journey. Oh, what the hell's a spiritual journey? I'm a doctor, I don't know anything about spiritual journeys, I want a pill. And then I realised that if I worked the steps on a daily basis, I began to feel better. I began to like me better because I was doing what you told me to do. In the morning I start when I open my eyes saying, "Help me to be more honest today, less selfish and self-centred." I have my 3 cups of coffee, one for God, one for me, one for God and me, and we chat. I say 2 prayers, the third step prayer, the 7th step prayer. I read my daily reflections and I meditate. I'm not quite sure what meditation is, but I do it. And I quiet my mind. And at the end of that half hour or so, I like me better. And if I like me better, I don't have to pick up someone to change me. And then during the day, I speak to my sponsees on the phone. When I'm agitated or restless, I stop and ask for some strength and direction, and it usually comes. And at night, when I go to bed, I put my head down and I say thank you. I don't know what I'm saying thank you to, but I'm saying thank you. And you know, doing that on a daily basis has worked for me. And I suspect, as Bill says, if I did what he did, I would get what he got. And if you want what I've got, you'll do what I've done. It's a very simple program for me. It's basically prayer and helping somebody else. I went from step 1, which is when I'm a little child, stamping my feet, wanting to get my own way, to step 12, when I'm trying to say to somebody, how can I be of help to you? The psychologists say I go from infantile omnipotence to altruism, to help somebody. And that's what the 12 steps do. They grow up my personality. So if I've got a borderline personality, or a narcissistic personality, or a sociopathic personality, if I do the 12 steps, that personality gets better. And when we're in AA, we don't see the personality problems that you see in the mental health field, because our personalities have matured through the process of the 12 steps. It's an absolute gift. And here am I in the middle of a crisis worldwide. Today is the first time I've been out of my house in 6 weeks. My program is exactly the same the way I told you about it, except I can't go to my meetings. So what do? I go to these Zoom meetings, and I sit and I see the faces of the men and women that I love in AA. We kibitz and we laugh again, because on page 132 of the big book, right in the middle, it says we have to absolutely enjoy life. And I absolutely enjoy life by being in AA. The only thing I miss in the Zoom meetings is that electricity, that energy, that power that is in the room of 12-step meetings, that I feel in the room. I can't identify what it is, but I feel it. And I don't get it so much with these Zoom meetings, except one other night there at a meeting, a man broke down and shared something extremely personal with the group of us on the Zoom meeting. And there was the power, there was the electricity, there was the one man reaching out to help another man. When one drunk talks to another drunk, miracles happen. Bill Wilson told me that. And I believe what Bill Wilson said, because it's worked for me. I have 7 men I sponsor. I speak to them every day. I have a couple of other guys I talk to every day now. We're all inside and not getting out. And I share with alcoholics on a daily basis, and that really helps me. I want to close with something that's written in the big book. It's from one of the stories. It's very simple. It said, I once knew a woman who was crying before a meeting. She was approached by a 5-year-old girl who told her, you don't have to cry here. This is a good place. They took my daddy and they made him better. That's exactly what AA did for me. It took me and it made me better. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. God bless you. Thank you very much.